I was regarded at Harvard Business School as being a communist.
A brief is setting out your ambition. The brief from the Pope was make them believe.
Innovation is ideas having sex.
It takes the same amount of energy to try and do something great as it does to justify something average.
If I was a CMO and I'd give them a 3-word brief, make us famous.
Hello everybody and welcome to the latest episode of our Better Marketing podcast, and what a delight to be here in Istanbul at the end of Global Marketer Week. Even bigger delight to be here with the current president, Rajamannar, ex-World Marketer of the Year, the WFA. Currently, of course, CMO of Mastercard, doing great things. Great to see you.
So firstly, David, thank you very much for having me on this show. Much appreciate the opportunity to share a few thoughts. And you're quite right. Probably this was one of the most tumultuous periods, at least in my career, that I have seen. And I must say that WFA really did some yeoman work, whether it is in the areas of sustainability and environment, brilliant work. Whether it is moving along the agenda on GARM, which is our Global Alliance for Responsible Media, that was something which was really valuable contribution to the industry as a whole. And we had taken a lot of playbooks, in terms of whether it is for brand safety and security, where we were a part of a global alliance, which was driving privacy first kind of areas. And we also have had a ton of areas around the media part of it, around talent development. So there were so many areas that we had focused on over this last 4 years. It has been very fulfilling, very gratifying. And WFA itself has had tremendous support across multiple initiatives. And just to give one example, when we had launched something called Planet Pledge. So Planet Pledge was basically about saying that we understand what is happening in the environment. We as marketers have a responsibility to fulfill. And here is a playbook of how you can do it, and take a pledge that we are going to commit to. And that's something which really has done very well. Already we have got 32 major companies which have participated in it. And we have recently done a pilot, which also is going to be very big for the next couple of years. I think it's going to give us a lot of impetus to see how we can actually pluck some of the low-hanging fruit to decarbonize the digital advertising ecosystem. And Mastercard has been one of those pilot partners. So I feel very good about it, and the kind of momentum that's happening under Stefan Larke's leadership. And for those of the folks who don't know, Stefan is the CEO of WFA, and he has been at it for 25 years and doing a marvelous job. So I'm very pleased. Last 4 years have been terrific.
Yeah, I mean, let's just celebrate Stefan for a minute, because he's a remarkable man. He's built an astonishing team, and above all, very talented, dedicated people, but lovely people. Great people to work with, who went through hell, I think, when the pandemic first arrived. But I hate this word. Pivoted brilliantly to use all the tools available to make everything work. And Stefan's leadership has been steadfast, human, and fantastic guy, isn't he? I mean, have you enjoyed working with him?
Absolutely. On one hand, he is a quintessential professional, world-class professional on the one hand, but he's also a wonderful human being. It's a small team that he has built, but high-performing team. It's a mighty team. And both in terms of getting the results on the one hand, but doing it with a heart. I think they have been doing a phenomenal job. And I think credit goes to Stefan for leading this team, putting this team together first, obviously.
Yeah. Well, he has. And as we celebrated the 70th, it was astonishing to reflect that, when he started, I think there were 50 members now, 155 and growing. Yes. And the community gets stronger, and actually the connections get stronger. So can you talk a little bit about the highlights of this conference and what particularly struck you? And then we're going to segue into Mastercard. But from a general perspective.
So from a general perspective, firstly, this has been one of the most successful conferences ever for WFA. Themes-wise, they were very coherent in terms of, at the end of the day, what WFA is about, enabling marketers to do better marketing. And part of that is all about, for example, environment and sustainability, societal purpose. And of course, you have got the tools like cross-media measurement, which is such a desperate need that there is for the industry. Because as a marketer today, I do not know in a real sense, what is the effectiveness of my advertising across all the media put together. So you as the previous president, I do remember in 2018, I believe, where you launched Media Charter 2.0.
That's right.
Now we have unveiled Media Charter 3.0, so building off of what you have actually laid foundations for. And so that's something which was one of the highlights. Then we had done some, like I was mentioning about this pilot, about trying to figure out, are there simpler and quicker ways of accomplishing decarbonization of the digital advertising ecosystem. Most of the people think print and the television and all the traditional media are very carbon intensive, whereas digital is not so. That's a myth. So for example, when we had done the study in the financial services or even at our own company, say 50% of the spend is digital, but the carbon footprint from digital is 80%. On the other hand, outdoor, the contribution is, say, the amount of money that we spend is about 30%, but the carbon footprint is only 2%. So it sort of gives you some new insights when you start looking at the drivers of carbon footprint. It is not what is intuitive, but it's completely counterintuitive. So getting into those kind of details and doing the pilots to see how the digital advertising ecosystem can be decarbonized, that's one kind of a thing. And what are some of the successful examples of companies like Unilever or Diageo? What are they doing and what kind of learnings can they have derived out of it and which other marketers can benefit from? I think it was a lot of, I would say, knowledge sharing, a lot of thought leadership. And I would say more than anything else, one of the most important things is for us all to get together as a group and a lot of camaraderie amongst these folks. Yeah. And it was in plenty that was witnessed over the last 3 days. So it was terrific.
It was. And again, just as the conferences have got bigger, the content has got better. I actually woke up remembering what Mark Adams was talking about and 2 or 3 things. So I love that notion of with-vertising before you do advertising. Yes. I loved the, find where the communities are and be in the internet, not on it. Yes. And actually that stuff I will take away and recycle and reuse, and I always do so with credit. But I particularly loved that Christina was celebrated as Global Marketer of the Year for the great job she's done at Diageo, where we should also celebrate, they now have an exco where half of them are women. So things are shifting, things are changing, and the purpose-driven work had phenomenal results. And actually, just as you've done at Mastercard, Johnny Walker, Keep Walking, an idea, beautiful brand-building idea that has transcended time, place, gender, and is now doing all sorts of wonders to keep building the Johnny Walker brand.
Absolutely. I know one more point, it clearly goes to show that it's not about purpose washing. But when you genuinely pursue your purpose, profits will follow, business will grow. And there was ample demonstration of it.
There was, and actually we'll come back and talk about the debate. Can you talk to us a little bit about the purpose-driven activity at Mastercard? Because you're always very humble about what you're up to, but there's some astonishing shifts being made, and the impact that has, because of the scale of Mastercard, is probably not as seen as it could and should be.
See, I think when you want to talk about purpose-drivenness, you have to walk the fine line. I think your actions have to speak louder than words. Otherwise, it will be easily interpreted that these guys are beating their chest, which means they're purpose washing. On the other hand, if you don't talk about it, nobody knows the good work that the brand is doing. So how will the brand actually grow and get associated with all the right attributes? The point is, firstly, at Mastercard, I feel so good about the fact that this is a company that is truly embraced purpose-drivenness. We have had the fortune of having a CEO like Ajay Banga in the past, who started this mantra at the company, saying that on the one hand, we have to be truly a company that walks the talk. We just don't make sound bites for political correctness and things like that. But if we say something, we have to do it. We as a company will be doing well by doing good. And so that goodness is what we pursue. The wellness here of the company is what follows. Yeah. So that's number 2. Number 3, we said, in order to do good, does the brand need permission? And so in fact, I was helping him through this whole process of thinking through and also corralling the rest of the executive committee to say, hey guys, this is what we have to do. And in that process, what we said was, it doesn't matter what category your product is or your company is in. If you are doing genuine social good, you have permission to do it. So we said, where do we start? So we said, for example, the biggest issues are hunger, cancer, and environment, and so on. So we said, let's pick up a few. Ideally, you would want to just do one, but because of the nature of our business, which is Mastercard, if you see, we are a payments enabling technologies company. And payments can be in any category. You might be in tourism, you might be in entertainment, luxury goods, or whatever, travel. So what we said is that we will not get ourselves restricted into one area or two areas. We will see what are the fewest that we can do to get the maximum impact, leveraging the power of our network. So at Mastercard, like right now, we have got more than 3.3 billion cards issued to more than 2.2 billion consumers, individual consumers. We have got more than 60,000 banks that we deal with and fintech companies. And we also have got about 100 million merchants where a Mastercard is accepted. So that's one humongous network that we have. So how can we leverage this network and disseminate whatever the action that we want through the network so that way things will get scaled very quickly? So just to give an example on cancer. So when we first said we will do something about finding cures for cancer, it's easy to roll your eyes and say, these guys are, they have lost their mind. What has Mastercard got to do with cancer cures? But we said we can really think out of the box and then do something about it, because the prevalence of cancer was so ubiquitous. It was really sad to see that. And everyone you talk to, they either are inflicted by cancer themselves, or they have a family member or a friend who they lost to cancer. So we said this is something which we will absolutely get into the space to find cures for cancer. So we partnered with a fantastic organization, not for profit obviously, called Stand Up to Cancer. And we said we will raise funds for you. We will help you with some methodologies of how you might want to think about the research and development process. We don't know about research and development, but processes. Are there any learnings from other industries that we can do? So what we did was we also realized that if you do something good on an ad hoc basis, you do good when your company is doing well. Whereas if the company has got financial pressure, these are the things which go to the back, first and foremost. So we said that we cannot afford to happen. So we will integrate that particular cause into the core of the business. So for North America, we said every summer, at that time when we started, restaurant category, dining category was very important. So I said each time you use your card at a restaurant, a small portion of the proceeds that Mastercard gets out of the transaction will contribute to Stand Up to Cancer. And we said we'll do it maybe up to $4 million. We finished those $4 million in less than 1 week.
Wow.
We said, wow. And then so right now we have contributed more than $60 million to this cause in terms of fundraising. And to build awareness around cancer, we have got more than $200 billion worth of media that we have generated, media visibility and stories that we have generated. And then when we went through the whole process, research and development is such a closed kind of an area. So what happens is if I'm in a medical center or in a pharmaceutical company or an educational center, we are very secretive about the research because that's our lifeline, that's our what will set us apart. But it shows that crowdsourcing and when you exchange information is when the progress is the fastest. Yeah. Secondly, tie the incentives that you give to the amount of progress that has been made when you're giving a grant or whatever. So we guided this company, this organization. They put together teams of 5 or 4 world-class specialists, ask them to take sabbatical or whatever it is. And they say, okay, normally if you get, say, hypothetically, $200,000 or $300,000 as your annual salary, we'll give you $1 million. But this $1 million will come when you cross these gates, stage gates basically. Typically, it takes 12 years for one drug to go from molecule discovery to FDA approval. Yeah. We have already got 8 drugs so far, which have been FDA approved. That's fantastic progress. Yeah. And these are the areas. So areas like this, we started making a difference in. But at the same time, as I said, it's not about chest beating and then say, hey, we have done this, because then say these guys have done it because they had an agenda to start with. The reality is our agenda was to find cures for cancer and link it credibly into our core business. So what happens is now our restaurant share in the year that we had run had shot up during the promotion. But after the promotion, we were at a higher level than what we were pre-promotion. So we settled at a higher level. So there was a net gain in our share. And area by area, we started doing this, and that was giving us terrific mileage, whether it is with the World Food Program, or we are now doing it with Priceless Planet, and so on and so forth. So it's been a wonderful journey. And one of the reasons why we have a very high level of retention and employees, we are not the highest pay masters by any stretch of imagination, but they come to us because they feel this is a purpose-driven company and they feel that they're doing something good.
Yeah, and I know several of your colleagues, and they take immense pride in working for Mastercard, which is unusual. So can I use this to then talk about the debate we saw yesterday? Because 2 or 3 things you've mentioned there. First of all, your CEO, the wonderful AJ Banger, thank goodness, I think he's now CEO of the World Bank. So
he has been nominated.
Let's hope he becomes it, because I think it'll make a major difference. But you know, I always loved my boss, Ross McEwen, got on very well with him, and he always talked about we have EQ, IQ,
and
DQ,
exactly.
decency quotient, which is another great business thing. And there's nobody more decent and emotionally intelligent than Rupen, who I thought did a fabulous job. First of all, stepping in first thing because somebody had dropped out, and always starts with his daughters, talks about their future. And in the debate, that balance of emotion and rational was astonishing, because the subject at hand was, should we marketeers start with consumers to fix the world, to shorthand it, or should we be looking inside, making sure we've driven the company shape, and then we'll change? And obviously this touches themes of leadership and all sorts of things. And what an astonishing flip of vote. I suspect it's a great thing about research. I'm not sure everybody understood the question when they first voted. But you know, to bring that all together, what's always astonished me about Mastercard is you seem to have done this from the inside out relentlessly. What's been interesting is watching a CEO change, not a ball dropped, no shift at all. So when you're watching that debate, what were you thinking? I mean, the different arguments you were hearing, how did you interact with them?
Yeah, you see, I could really relate a lot to what he was saying. Practically everything that he was saying, it really resonated and rang so true in the context of Mastercard as well. And to your point, when you really embrace the objective, when you get the right balance between the heart and the mind, I think magic happens. And when people feel inspired in the company, they go those extra miles, which normally you cannot get through any other means than by inspiring them. When they feel emotionally vested in it, they see that they're going to office every day or work every day, not to just for their livelihood, but they're also doing something very good. There's a sense of gratification and fulfillment, plus there is also a sense of pride in the company and belonging to that kind of an area. And plus the company treats people very, very well with lots of flexibility and understanding what their situation is. And I'll give you one small anecdote. So when this pandemic thing started and everything has become remote, one of the first things that we did, starting with Ajay, and then each one of his direct reports, we did, like for example, I called up every single one of my team members around the world, saying that, look, we know this is a difficult situation. We know that people are being fired or furloughed in other companies, right? And that's obviously something which will be weighing in heavily on you. So for this year, which is the year of the pandemic, you don't have to worry about your job security. Your job is not going to go anywhere. So first, relax. Number 2, we know that you have to work out of home. You are surrounded by small kids, your pets, and people in the family are demanding, your elderly parents, or your husband is asking, or your wife is asking. You cannot ignore it. So it is okay to be a family person. Don't feel apologetic, don't feel awkward or embarrassed. Just be yourself. We know you're at your home. And home is not a place where you're like, stiff and everything is compartmentalized. If you're in the middle of the conversation, your kid is coming and asking for milk or whatever, the kid's demand is important. So just don't feel awkward. We are all human beings. We are all got families. So let's not pretend that the moment you wear on the professional and a garb, so to speak, that suddenly you change. Third, we said is, we know you have to feed in the morning and the afternoon, your family. So In the morning breakfast time, no meetings. Lunchtime, no meetings. And after 5 o'clock, no formal meetings will be set. Feel free to reach out to each other, no problem, but we'll not have, so those times you can block out to spend with your family, etc. Now, this might seem like something which is not a big deal, but to employees it was.
I think an enormous deal. And was that done at a pace? I mean, you did that from the get-go as lockdown started?
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
When we did that, so I think, if you purely go by the Maslow's hierarchy, the first thing is you want, basic needs have to be satisfied. And they are dependent a lot on your, what you call employment. If you don't have your job in a pandemic kind of a situation, you can't find another job. And you have got mortgages to pay, you've got your family expenses, and not everyone is fortunate to have a massive savings that they can dip into and survive on that. So that was the most important thing. And at that time, therefore, we said, this is what we have to address. And we'll figure it out. I think as a company, we were not doing too badly. And it's very critical at that stage to be with the employees and then make sure that we tell them and show them that we are with them, we understand their concerns. And that really made all the difference, I would say, to start with. And the flexibility was the second thing, which was fantastic for people. They deeply appreciated it. And believe it or not, our employee satisfaction scores, which we measure, were the highest ever during the pandemic. Yeah. Okay, the morale was high. Morale, and of course, if people have been impacted by pandemic, particularly the earlier stages when there was no vaccine and all, there was a lot of concern and people were extremely, what you call tense. And particularly in countries like India, where lots of people had been infected, there was oxygen shortage and so on. So we went out of our way to reach out and we contributed a vaccine fund. We contributed to actually oxygen cylinders being sent to some countries and so on and so forth. So we did as much as an individual organization can do. And that, I think, employees saw that we walked the talk. And that journey, we have been doing it not just overnight or during pandemic, but it has been there. But the pandemic was one of the most powerful proof points for them.
One of the things you did, apart from the wonderful job during the pandemic, was write a book. Tell us about how did you write it? How's it going?
Now, the whole premise that I have actually come up in the second round, which is in 2018, when I was looking at the entire scenario, is that a lot of principles of marketing have changed. Like, for example, when you look at things like loyalty, all right, one of the things is, as an industry, we spend more than $1 trillion on loyalty programs across the world. I said, do they work? And what happens if you take loyalty away? Is there at all a concept called loyalty in existence? Can you be loyal to something which is inanimate? Can you be I started asking these fundamental questions, and my conclusion is humans are not hardwired for loyalty. That's a very radical kind of a thing. And I started looking, with that hypothesis, started doing a lot of research and both secondary, and I commissioned my own research. And I said the loyalty programs that we are having today are completely useless. We need to rethink and reinvent the entire paradigm. I went area by area, like, is advertising working? And how do we know that it is working or not working? And yesterday, I don't remember the name of the speaker, but someone said, look, advertising is actually an interruption to your experience on the internet. I said, look, it is an interruption. So I would like an interruption. If it is certain occasion like Super Bowl, people are really eager to see what is on the new, in the advertising space. And that's also more, I would say, marketing-oriented people or marketing professionals themselves are excited more than the real consumers. And I said, should we really relook at our entire communication model? The need for communication does not change, but the way you communicate has to evolve. And I started doing all this and then put the whole series of concepts together called quantum marketing. And it resonated very well. And I had a debate with some professors at Harvard Business School. They said, Raja, let's actually, I will want to challenge. I said, yeah, let's go through it. I did it. At the end of the day, they really loved my way of thinking, and I felt, again, flattered about it. They have done away with the 4 Ps of marketing. They don't teach at their MBA anymore. And now they have got a different framework, and they have sent me a letter saying that they found my contribution valuable to their thinking.
How
and
generous of them.
how they how they rethought their entire curriculum and how they teach marketing. And so since I have been doing this for many companies, both at Harvard as well as Yale University, and also directly with some companies, I've been trying to sort of advise them or not advise them. I'm sort of sharing my thoughts and how they can potentially take these new concepts, and the response has been fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, on the loyalty point, the data behind that is astonishing, isn't it? When you actually realise how much people had continued to invest in the belief that they were building loyalty when it's just not true.
It is not true at all.
Because as we both know, I used to have this discussion in the bank, that don't talk about customer loyalty, it's inertia. They can't be bothered to go somewhere else. And it's not, and actually what people are looking for is a value exchange. And again, a brilliant example from Connie yesterday, where that thing where Unilever were talking, if you educate, 15-second film, education of what this category and product is about, and if you watch it, there's a reward coming your way. Brilliant, because it's a great value exchange, and it's also purpose-driven. So watching these things adapt and change. But the problem is, as Sir John Hegarty pointed out to us all last year, it's still true that most of what people put on the internet is crap.
Totally.
And how are we going to fix that? Because as you know, I'm very passionate about creativity. So in addition to tech, in addition to all of this, we need great work that builds empathy and cuts through. What's your view on that? When you were talking at Harvard, were you talking about that?
Yes, in fact, there were 2 points. The first part of it is, I'll just touch upon for a minute on loyalty itself, right? The genesis to that whole thought was, I read a report, one of the British publications has talked about doing a survey amongst people who are either married or in a live-in relationship. They asked them, how many of you have cheated on your partners? The number was astonishing, 70%. I said, wow, this is fascinating. Let me look at other data that is there. The data is relatively scarce, but then there was some data available. So looked at it, it was a universal phenomenon. Not only were 70% of the people cheating on their partners, a further 15% have said that if they are sure they will not get caught, they don't mind straying. This is in spite of the fact, on the one hand, they have made a commitment, either implicit or explicit, when getting into a relationship, married or otherwise. Plus, they're aware of the consequences. The consequences are reputational damage, financial damage, emotional damage to the people that they care about. So in spite of making the commitments and being aware of the consequences, still people are actually straying big time. And then here come along marketers. And we say, we'll give you miles, we'll give you points and cashback, now you are loyal to me. That's kidding yourself completely. Now, if I look at my own situation, I have got frequent flyer memberships, which they call loyalty programs, across most of the major airlines because I travel quite a lot. I have got all the hotel loyalty points. Even for groceries, I got Costco, I got Sam's Club, I have got Kroger, and I got Amazon Prime. Who am I loyal to? Right? So I think that loyalty concept is completely fallacious, and we need to rethink. So that was one part of it. Each time there is a big revolution from a technology point of view, marketing undergoes through a transformation.
Yeah.
When internet came, that was a shift of marketing from second to the third paradigm. In 2007, when iPhone was launched and mobile phones became ubiquitous, and you had also social media platforms which scaled in 2007, between mobile and social, people's lifestyles have completely altered, transformed. So marketing has to transform. That was when marketing moved from the third paradigm to the fourth paradigm. Now we are at the verge of being deluged by literally a tsunami of technologies. So you have got artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, autonomous driving vehicles, which by the way has got a huge impact on radio. And you have got blockchains, cryptocurrencies, and wearables, Internet of Things. When all these are coming in, and each one of them have a significant potential to change people's lives and lifestyles, marketing has to evolve. So this, to me, is going to be the single biggest disruption. When technology is so fast, so advancing so fast, it levels the competing field. Everyone has access to the same technologies. Like, for example, if you look at ChatGPT, $20 a month. You have unlimited access to ChatGPT, and that also is the race to the bottom. It's going down, and more new tools are coming up, very affordable. So which means a small company, which is a startup, can compete on the same level playing field with the access to these technologies as a large company. Then how will a company compete and stay ahead of the game? It is through creativity and innovation. that is going to be the one which will distinguish companies. Thinking completely, it's not just having these powerful technological tools, but how do you use them differently? How do you leverage them differently? And it is at the end of the day, how do you connect with consumers, both at their hearts as well as minds, much more so hearts, and how do you move the needle? Creativity is going to be mighty critical. And also now with the kind of technological tools that are available, creativity itself will go to a different level. Just to give a simple example, we created at Mastercard something called the digital marketing engine. It's quite a bland description of what it is literally, but we wanted to keep things very simple. It's a digital marketing engine where deploying artificial intelligence, it looks at all the signals, both in the social media and in the traditional media, identify micro trends which are happening. A micro trend is a trend which lasts for less than 3 days. It predicts the next micro trends, and then it tries to look at the repository of messages and offers and promotions that Mastercard has in its library, picks out which is the most appropriate one, and creates an advertisement around it, buys the right media, does A/B testing. There are multiple versions of ads, and it optimizes the design of the ad, gets the metrics in real time, measures. The entire thing is automated, heavily dependent on different types of AI that we have deployed. Not now, 4 years back we have started this. And the results are like 4 to 8 times, I'm not talking percentages, but 4 to 8 times of what a pre-engine optimized digital campaign was producing for us.
Yeah.
Now, and if you look at the creative stuff that is out there, it is nothing earth-shattering. But when you start now with particularly the generative AI which has come, what happens is the process of creativity becomes so seamless and so almost instantaneous that you go berserk, saying, okay, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. The limitations are all gone practically. And I think that will take creativity to a completely different level. And I'm very excited about it. And I think this is the golden era that we are just about to enter for marketers.
Good. Well, let's hope so. But can I just be remiss of me to end this without asking you to at least mention, because I absolutely love this, in your speech last night, you were telling us the story that somebody had pointed out to you that when you're in Turkey, you might like to take advantage of the opportunity to get a bit more hair.
Exactly.
And you put a wig on, and I know that the guys will now be showing that as I watch this.
And I put a blonde wig at that.
A blonde wig, almost Trump-esque, which was the...
I would go political now. That was totally unintentional.
But also featured the joke I'd never heard, that you flew here on Turkish Airlines. A wonderful Pamo. Raja, as always, total delight to talk to you and see you. And congratulations on a fantastic 4 years of presidency. Know you're going to continue, which is great for all of us. And I know that when we meet again, you'll have taken Mastercard further and you'll keep building the great collaboration with the WFA. So absolute pleasure, sir.
Thank you so very much.
Well.
Always
Thank
a pleasure.
So
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I leave Istanbul with some great learning and I think some opportunity to make these better marketing podcasts better. Partly by using our community more and finding the white spots, so expect us to start getting better at that. Because if I reflect back over the great conversations I've had, it's a shame that more people haven't listened to them. And I realized recently that the perfect podcast is the one that gets you 10,000 steps at the same time, which is what Rob Cameron did. But I did want to end by my observation of Istanbul is, as Rob wisely said, SDG number 16, which is basically about collaboration, should have been number 1. And what you see at the WFA is, it absolutely is the thing that makes an incredible difference. So thank you to the WFA and look forward to seeing you all next time for another Better Marketing Podcast. Bye.